This sure must be a special event. I mean, look at this. You get out of school, you get your new t-shirts, you get a bandana, and for the first time in my life, I'm going to be wearing white linen gloves. I guess we're going to start off. We certainly want to thank Cheryl Henderson and the Museum of East Tennessee History for hosting us today. And Cheryl, would you like to say a few words to start us off?
I want to start with welcoming this bright, fresh group of children here, the students. Thank you all for coming. This day, I want you to listen and pay attention because this day will mean a lot to you, and you'll remember it for the rest of your lives because it's part of your history. Okay? I'm Shirley Anderson. I apologize for my voice. I'm the Executive Director of the East Tennessee Historical Society, and we are honored by today's occasion, and we are especially honored by the presence of each of you. The building you're in is the East Tennessee History Center. The building specializes in the history of East services, the history of East Tennessee and East Tennessee families. The story that we are honoring today, your story is a particularly noteworthy one in our history. I want to turn the program back to Carol and Barry. We first met Carol and Barry, hard to believe, 15 years ago in 2002 when we presented them with awards for their wonderful work in preserving the history of Coal Creek and Freedomville. Since then, we've worked with them many times in children's education and other projects, and they have guided historical tours for East Tennessee Historical Society members through that beautiful historic area there. We count them among our dearest and most admired friends.
Thank you, Cheryl. One more example of how this is such a special event. I see where Anderson County Mayor Kerry Frank snuck in back there. Stand up here so everybody can see you. So we know this. So why is it such a special day? Anybody have any idea why it's such a special day? Well, the reason it's such a special day is Hal Harmon's watch and David Dezern's cap lamp that were with them on May 19th, 1902, when the Fayetteville mine exploded. Those precious artifacts are going to be donated to the Museum of East Tennessee History, where they will now reside beside David Crockett's rifle. So that shows you how important those artifacts are. The Fayetteville disaster remains one of the, in fact, it remains the worst disaster in the history of mining in the South. So why do we remember disasters? Well, you know, it's not the disasters so much as the people who rebuild from the ashes after the disasters. And we honor those who die by carrying on with our lives. You know, life goes on. And I think this is a perfect example when our next people that are going to come up here are descendants of David Dezern. And as I said, life goes on. And you will see how life went on after David Dezern's fatal death. So I'd like for Louise and Marie to come up here. They're going to introduce their families to you.
Thank you, Barry. We are very fortunate because our families come from all over the country, and for them to be here today has been such a joy to me, and we appreciate so much being able to leave our precious land here to be safe for y'all. And then I'm Louise, and I am Nelson, and I live here in Knoxville.
Marie Moritz, and I live in Milford, Illinois.
Now, these family members, could they come up here and introduce
Absolutely.
themselves? I would like for each one of the family members, all of you to come up here. Come on, and I want you to introduce yourselves and tell where you came from. Where you came from. Okay, come on. Don't be bashful. You're related to me, so don't be bashful. All right, just walk right up here.
I'm Bob Nelson. This is my wife Ann. We're from Birmingham, Alabama, and I am the great-great-grandson of David DeSoto.
Who's your mama?
Louise Nelson.
I'm the grandmother.
Steve and Donna Moritz. I'm also a great-great-grandson of David. Marie is my mother. Milford, Illinois.
I'm Dan Nelson. This is my wife Pat. I'm a great-great-great-grandson. And we're from Paris, Tennessee.
I'm Sherry Van Hovland. I'm the youngest in this group right here. This is my husband, Mark, and David is also my great-great-grandfather, and I am the daughter of Marie Moritz. And he's from, and I'm from Pontiac, Illinois.
We also have Danny Gaylor here. Danny, do you want to come up here, you and your wife? Danny is the great-grandson of Jacob Val. He will be a important part of our story today. So tell us your name and where you're from.
Okay. My name's Danny Gaylor, and this is my wife Brenda. We live in Halls. We live in a condo complex along with Louise Nelson. So we're kind of close, and we just came together years later. And Jacob Val was my great-grandfather.
Now, what's the odds? You know, two people moving into the same condo, and one is the granddaughter and one is the great-grandson of two miners who died in the Fredericksburg mine explosion. It's a small world. You're all welcome to sit down. Did you get your picture, Carol? Where's Carol go? I would like for the ladies to stand in front of their spouses, and you can just stay right there.
You want them to get...
Go and come over here.
She stands in front of you. Y'all know high cameras make you look younger and thinner.
All right.
Raise it on.
Yeah, keep going.
One more this direction.
So you guys are going this way.
I would like to say for our whole family how much we appreciate the museum for doing this and keeping this precious light in the light and safe here. I want to say thank you, children, for coming. It's so great to see all of you, and I hope you pass your history lesson. And I also want to thank Barry and Carol for all that they have done to help us to find out more about our heritage. It's been such a joy, and to think that we're able, I'm 97 years old, so God has been good to all of us. And I just want to tell everybody again, thank you so much, and thank you, dear friends. I see so many of you here from here in Knoxville. Thank you for coming too.
You know, the journeys these artifacts took to get here are testaments to an amazing story. I mean, it really, truly is an amazing story. The short version of the story, is 5,000 miles and 4,000 miles. I will tell you the rest of the story in a minute here, but I want to also introduce some other individuals that are here with us today. They're not here in body, but they're here in spirit. And that's the individuals that are on the placards around the room. These are, of course, our guests of honor, being Kyle Harmon and David Discern. They get special treatment. They get 2 photographs of each of them. And then around the table, most of them were Fraterville miners. Some of them were Cross Mountain miners. And the Cross Mountain mine plays into this story also. I think before I get into the specific story here, I want to do a little bit about the history. You know, some of you kids have heard the history, and some of you adults, but I'm going to repeat it anyway because it's important to be able to put this story in perspective to understand the history behind why all these individuals were in the Fraterville mine on May 19, 1902. And the story started here in Knoxville after the Civil War, which had pretty well destroyed Knoxville and most of East Tennessee. The community leaders of that day saw the rich natural resources, development of those rich natural resources as a way to rebuild, but they lacked the skill to do so. So therefore they recruited experienced Welsh miners and iron workers. And one of those experienced Welsh miners is on the table over here, David R. Thomas. He came from Wales. He first lived in Ohio, then he moved to Coal Creek in order to mine coal. And he was with about 100 other miners. And life was good. They built schools and churches and roads and homes. But then in 1877, that was the first event that affected their lives. That's when the Welsh miners at the Knoxville Iron Company were fired and replaced with convicts. But life goes on. As I said, no matter what situation is, life goes on. So David R. Thomas went to work in the Fraterville mine, which was just down the road from the Knoxville Iron Company mine. Many of the other Welsh miners went throughout the state and to other states where they became superintendents because they had the mining experience. And those individuals taught native Tennesseans mining experience, and many people from Appalachia came to Coal Creek for the opportunity, for a new way of life. And for many of them, it was the first time they had ever been in a community. They felt like they were part of a community. They worshiped together, they went to schools, their kids went to school together. But then another major event happened in July of 1891 when striking miners at the Tennessee mine in Bryceville were replaced by convicts. And that really got all of the miners agitated because they saw that as a sign that their community could end, that all of the mines could bring in convicts and they'd be out of work. You know, where they had spent years gaining the training to be miners, it all could go to waste. And this wonderful community that they had built could all go to waste. So what they did, in the corner back here on the side, this photograph right here, this photograph right there, that's where they all got together to come up with a plan. And their plan was they captured the convict stockade, they marched the guards and the convicts to the train depot in the town of Coal Creek, they put them on a train to Knoxville, and they sent a letter a telegram to Governor Buck Buchanan saying, you're not going to work in Coal Creek anymore. Well, the governor eventually sent in the Tennessee National Guard, and on the placard in the very back of the room here is a picture of the Tennessee National Guard on Fort Anderson on Militia Hill. They literally had cannons and Gatling guns. And although the miners fought valiantly for 18 months, they lost the final battle, but they won the war because Governor Buchanan was not reelected. And the new governor, Peter Turney, had campaigned on a promise to eliminate convict leasing, and he fulfilled that promise. He got the legislature to appropriate money to build Brushy Mountain State Prison, coal mine, and coke ovens. So rather than leasing convicts out to other mines, the state went into the mining business. Now, some people would have objected to using government funds, a government-supported program to go into private enterprise. But the Coal Creek miners didn't care. Man, they had more work than they could handle. And many of them said that, if we can't compete with a bunch of convicts working in a government coal mine, then we might as well just go sit on the porch. We can be much more productive than they can. And during the Coal Creek War, David R. Thomas I was telling you about, one of the reasons that he went to the work in the Frederickville mine was because its owner, whose name was Major Eldad Cicero Camp, made him a promise that he would never work convicts in the Frederickville mine, and that's a promise that he kept. He made that promise to a lot of miners. In fact, what his goal was, I guess you'd call it today, his business model. He wasn't a miner. He was a district attorney and a businessman, an attorney. He would recruit experienced miners who would go to work in his mine, and he would encourage them to bring their families along with them. And that's how the Frederickville mine was built. You had entire male members of families working there. And May 19th, 1902 was, it was a day just like any other day had been. 1902, what was going on in 1902? Well, Teddy Roosevelt was president. There was a positive attitude in the country. We had a young, vibrant president whose goal and who felt like his mission in life was to improve the stature of America on the world stage. He even talked about building a canal in Panama, something that the French had failed to do. France was a major power then. The United States wasn't. But we had the ambition to become a major power. So, life was good at that point. May 19, 1902 was just like any other day at that period of time. Josie Harmon got up, fixed her husband, Powell, breakfast. She did the same thing for her 8 kids. It was important that he have a hot breakfast before he went to work. She made sure she packed a lunch with him. She made sure that her children, who 4 of them at the time were students at Briceville School, she made sure that they had their lunches. Similar story in the DeZern family, only in that case, Catherine DeZern, her husband had died 10 years before in a logging accident, but she still had 3 unmarried sons, and she fixed them hot breakfast each morning, and then she relied on her daughters and her daughters-in-law to fix lunches for her sons and her sons-in-law. She had 7 sons or sons-in-law who worked at the Frederickville mine. Lula DeZern, it's her responsibility to cook breakfast for her husband, David, and for her daughter, Lula. David DeZern, just like any other day, got up, kissed his wife, kissed his daughter, was looking forward to getting off work that day and coming home. One of the things that Lula did is she always checked her husband's cap lamp to make sure it had fuel in it, because she didn't want him to run out of fuel in the cap lamp, because that's what he used to see when he was in the Fayetteville mine. Then tragedy happened. The Fayetteville mine exploded. George Camp was the superintendent. He was the son of Major Eldad Cicero Camp, and Major Camp was a real character. Let me tell you, you can't lick your fingers when you got cotton gloves on. You know, workers museum, you ever notice that? It's kind of hard to get your papers apart. But anyway, although Major Camp had no mining experience, this was an important part of his portfolio, the Fayetteville mine. So his business philosophy was to get experienced miners who would get their relatives to work with them. That's why they called it Fayetteville. It was the freighter, like a fraternity. It was like a village of brothers. And he didn't have any mining experience, and his son George didn't know what he wanted to do in life. So Major Camp put him to work in the coal mine, in the Fayetteville mine. And he got his mining experience being trained by many of the individuals you see in these photographs around the room here. Mine rescue crews went in after the explosion, and miners came from different, from throughout East Tennessee and also southeastern Kentucky to be part of the rescue crew. That's what mining communities did during a disaster. They knew that their mine might blow up, and they would be looking for others to come rescue them. So it was their duty to be on the mine rescue crews when a mine exploded. Mine rescue crews were led by George Camp, David DeZern, and an individual back here at this table, Philip Francis, who was another Welsh miner. They led the rescue crews, and the women and the children waited outside, not knowing what had happened to their loved ones. And it was, you can't explain the trying atmosphere of the unknown. And the relatives are always waiting for any word, any sign of hope that their loved one might still be alive. The next day, after the explosion, the rescuers found a barricade. And that's something that miners have learned to do for hundreds of years. If there's an explosion, poisonous gases form, and you find a safe part of the mine where you can build a barricade to keep out the poison gases. You run the risk that if the rescuers don't get there fast enough, you could suffocate, but it's a risk. It's a risk that miners have learned to take. Well, the next day after the explosion, the rescuers found a barricade. So there was hope that miners were alive. They tore down the barricade, but sadly, all 26 miners behind the barricade had perished. Two of those miners were Jacob Val and Powell Harmon. On Jacob Val's person, he was holding his young son Elbert. And in his pocket, they found his field book that he used to keep notes on how much coal he mined. And in that, they found a letter that he had written to his family. So I'm going to ask Danny to come and read this letter. This letter has been read in speeches by at least 2 presidents I know of.
Okay, where's my,
Understudy. She's going to read it after you.
oh, okay.
Come on up.
Come on up here.
This is such a great letter. I want to hear it twice.
What's your name? Hessa. Well, I'm Danny Gaylor, and Jacob Bell was my great-grandfather.
Hold the mic down.
Jacob Bell was my great-grandfather, and I may have to get her to do this before I get through. He said, "We are shut up at the head of the entry with little air, and the air is closing in on us fast. and it is now about 12 o'clock. Dear Ellen, I have to leave you in bad condition. And my mother's name was Mary Ellen. She was named after her grandmother. But dear wife, set your trust in the Lord to help you raise my little children. I'm so glad he said that. Ellen, take care of my little darling Lily. It was my grandmother. Ellen, little Albert said he had trusted in the Lord. Charles Wood said he was safe if he never lived. He was safe if he never lived to see the outside again. He would meet his mother in heaven. If we never get out, we are not hurt, but only perishing for air. There is but a few of us here, and I don't know where the other man is. Albert said, for you all to meet him in heaven, all the children meet with us both. Ellen, darling, goodbye for us both. Albert said the Lord had saved him. Do the best you can with the children. We are all praying for air to support us, but it's getting so bad without any air. Horace, Albert said for you to wear his shoes and clothing. It is now 1:30. Pound Harmon's watch is now in Andy Wood's hand. Ellen, I want you to live right and come to heaven. Raise the children the best you can. Oh, how I wish I could be with you. Goodbye to all of you. Goodbye. Bury me and Albert in the same grave by little Eddie. Goodbye, Ellen. Goodbye, Millie. Goodbye, Jimmy. Goodbye, Horace. We are together. It is 25 minutes till 2. There is a few of us are alive yet. Jake and Albert. Oh God, for one more breath. Ellen, remember me as long as you live. Goodbye, darling.
That is such a great letter. Let's hear it again.
We are shut up in the head of the entry with little air, and bad air is closing in on us fast. And it is now about 12 o'clock. Dear Ellen, I have to leave you in bad condition, but dear wife, set your trust in the Lord to help you raise my little children. Ellen, take care of my little darling Lily. Ellen, little Albert said he had trusted in the Lord. Charles Wood said he is safe if he never lives to see the outside again. He would meet his mother in heaven. If we never live to get out, we are not hurt, but only perished for air. There is but a few of us here, and I don't know where the other man is. Albert said, for you all to meet him in heaven, all the children meet with us both. Ellen, darling, goodbye for us both. Albert said the Lord has saved him. Do the best you can with the children. We are praying for air to support us, but it is getting so bad without any air. Horace Albert said for you to wear his shoes and clothing. It is now 1:30. Powell Harmon's watch is now in Andy Wood's hand. Ellen, I want you to live right and come to heaven. Raise the children the best you can. Oh, how I wish to be with you. Goodbye to all of you. Goodbye. Bury me and Albert in the same grave by little Eddie. Goodbye, Ellen. Goodbye, Lily. There is a few of us are alive yet, Jake and Albert. Oh God, for one more breath, Ellen, remember me as long as you live. Goodbye.
Okay, now, we started this, arranging this, because Kyle Harmon's great-granddaughter was going to come from California to donate it in person. But she has had a medical situation in her family. Her daughter has been having uncontrollable migraine headaches, so she was afraid to come and leave her daughter. So she was going to read the letter, but she's not here, so that was Barb Titus. So instead, we have Kirsten who's going to read it for us. This is Kyle Harmon's farewell letter.
Dear orphan children, my time has come to die. I trust in Jesus. Teach my children to believe in Jesus. May God bless you all in my prayer. Bless Jesus. It is now 10 minutes to 10, and we are almost smothered. Don't know how long we will live, but it is our time to go. I hope to meet you all in heaven. May God bless you all, wife and children. For Jesus' sake, goodbye, until we meet to part no more. My boys never work in the coal mines, Henry and Condi. Be good boys and stay with your mother and trust for Jesus' sake.
You know, it was difficult for Danny to read that letter because his great grandfather mentioning his grandmother and his great grandmother. But think about Henry and Connie Harmon. Their father, Powell, specifically asked them, kind of instructed them, boys, never work in the coal mines. Connie Harmon faced a dilemma. He was 15 years old at the time. He was a student at Briceville School. And no, he wasn't slow. Back in those days, students at Briceville spent their entire educational years at Briceville School. He was a good student, but he faced a dilemma. You know, I'm sure he said to himself, do I honor my father's last wishes and finish my schooling, or do I quit school and go to work to help support my father's family? Well, family came first. Condi quit Briceville School and went to work in the Cross Mountain Mine to help support his father's family. He never married, never had any children, and died in 1911 when the Cross Mountain Mine exploded. His sister was Myrtle. Myrtle was a few years younger. She too quit school so she could help tend the younger children in the family. Remember, there were 8 kids in the family. So Myrtle quit school to help raise her brothers and sisters, and Condi quit school to go work in the coal mine. And when we met the Harmon family, we met them at the Cross Mountain. We had a memorial service at Cross Mountain where Condi had died, and we had Harmons from 5 states show up. And I asked them, I said, you are not directly related. You're not directly descended from Condi Harmon, yet you come from 5 states. And they all said the same thing. They said Condi Harmon was our hero. Powell Harmon led a long and prosperous life. Condi gave up his life to support his family, his father's family. He never was able to finish his education. So they told us that the family tells their youngsters that Condi can never finish his education, but you can honor him by finishing yours. And man, you've never seen so many doctors and nurses and engineers and lawyers and individuals with advanced degrees that we got in the Harmon family. Barb Titus, who donated the watch, she was she was, she's, like I said, she's in California, she's been in Georgia, she's an aeronautical engineer who has worked throughout the country, and each place she's gone, she's taken the watch with her. And so that story, the legacy of Connie Harmon, that's a great story for Briceville students, because not only can a Harmon descendant honor Condi by finishing their education, so can Briceville students. And that's why at the Briceville Library we have the historical marker telling the story of the legacy of Condi Harmon. That I hope you don't just walk by every day and ignore it. It was put there for a reason, so that every Briceville student knows about Condi Harmon. And the same can be said about Myrtle Harmon, because she quit school to help raise her father's family. At this point, I'd like to, remember I told you the story of the 5,000 miles and 4,000 miles? Well, the watch started out in Fredericksburg. It went to Briceville. That's where the family lived. From there, it went to Ohio, where many of the family members moved, including Myrtle. It then was given to Barb Titus, Powell Harmon's great-granddaughter, and it moved to Georgia with her. It's now residing in California, and it's now coming home to Tennessee, here at the museum. So that's the story of the watch. You heard Danny read it in Jacob Howell's letter. That's how it got to here. And let me tell you something. One of probably the main reason that Barb Titus, who's in California, donated that watch to the museum is because of you students. You are at the school where her grandmother went to school. And she's on she keeps up with what's going on, how you're studying Coal Creek history. And she wanted to show her appreciation for you all carrying on the memory of her grandmother and her great-grandfather by donating that to the museum here, so that when you come on field trips, you all can see it. And I've saved the other story. The story of the lamp, best story for last. I think at this point, it's just to have a break from me talking. Mayor Frank, can I get you to come over here for a minute?
I'll shift up there.
I want her to, Mayor Frank is the daughter and the granddaughter of Tennessee coal miners. And she's one of our role models for the Briceville students, and I'd like for her to say a few words to you.
Well, I wasn't prepared to say anything, Barry, but this is an awesome day, and Barry and Carol do such a wonderful job, and I know you all have been so patient sitting here. Can you take a break and give them a big round of applause? I do come from a coal mining family, and my grandfather was a coal miner in New River, and he and my father and his brother actually worked in the mines. And what Carol and Barry do and to keep history alive is so very important. I often say that to know where we're going, we have to know where we've been. So what you're learning today is so important, and it's just an honor to see all the family members and all the folks with your reading the letter was just incredibly beautiful and brought tears to my eyes. And, it's really what it's all about, isn't it? We're all human at the end of the day, and sharing and remembering is important to know who we are and where we're going. So keep up the good work. Thank you for what you do. And this is really exciting. Very, very, I don't even know what to say, Barry. Just bringing the watch here, and the East Tennessee Historical Museum is just a great place too. So thank you.
I I'd like for Fred Brown to come up here. Fred was instrumental in getting the watch to the museum, because when Barb Titus came for the Cross Mountain Memorial Service, she ran her car off the road into a ditch, and Fred helped her out.
It was on Briceville Highway.
I had a better knee in those days. Thank you, Barry and Carol. I want you students to understand something. Your history is so important to you. I came from a little cotton mill town in Cedartown, Georgia, and my folks worked in a cotton mill. And so your ancestors worked in the coal mines. They were hard-working people, hard-working folks. And it's especially important for you to learn your history, enjoy your history, go to school, be good students, come back and give back to your community. Barry and Miss Carol have helped me in so many ways that I can't really explain all of it to you. They let me write stories, and one of them was about, they invited me to go to the Cross Mountain reunion there, and I met Barb Titus, and when she had a wreck, we were able to get her out of the ditch, I think, back it up, but she and I got to talk. I learned more about the watch, learned about her family, and it just turned into a story for an old newspaper reporter. I'm telling you, you can take your history and you can do something with it in your life. It's important. And when you have good friends like Barry and Miss Carol, you can't miss. Thank you.
Now the story of the lamp. I tried to get, Louise can tell this story much better than I can, but she wanted to play bashful, and so I'm still going to make her get up here and speak. She's going to be our last speaker, and but I will try to tell the story of the lamp. Remember I told you that Catherine Nazern, who was Louise's great-grandmother, she actually had 6 sons. 5 of them worked in the Fayetteville mine, and at a time, and they would take turns working on the farm. One of the 6 sons would take turns working on the farm. One of them in particular didn't like working in the mine. He liked working on the farm. So most of the time, he's the one who worked on the farm, and the other 5 worked in the mine. And David was one of the ones who worked in the mine. The lamp was recovered by the rescuers, and again, that's one thing that mine rescuers take pride in, is preserving any artifact, anything they can find, just to give comfort to the family. Remember I told you about Connie Harmon dying in the Cross Mountain mine? The rescuers told his mother, Josie Harmon, that his body wasn't hurt, it looked like he smothered, but that his right boot was missing. And Connie's mother took that as a message from Connie that he had gotten right with the Lord. And one thing you'll notice in all of these farewell letters and all of these stories, the one thing that they all have in common is God and family, which tells you life's priorities back in 1902, and hopefully life's priorities today. But anyway, the story of the lamp. It was given to David's wife, Lula, and David's wife and her young daughter Eva did what most Fayetteville widows did. Life goes on, you got to get on with life. You remember, you honor the memory of the missing ones, but you got to get on with life. You don't become a victim. She remarried, And when her daughter Eva was a young girl, about 11 or 12 years old, her mother passed away. So here Eva was living with her stepfather, and in the meantime, the stepfather and Lula, her mother, had had children of their own, and they decided that the best thing for Eva was for her to go to live with family in Illinois. So young Eva, not even a teenager, was put on a train and sent to live with family members she didn't know or barely knew in Illinois. And one of the few possessions that she took with her was this little oil lamp that her father had worn on his cat, so that it's an oil lamp, so that he could see when he was working in the Fredericksburg mine. And that lamp became, that was her treasure. That was one of her only links to her family. When she had children, Louise and Maria, when she had children, they cherished that lamp. Again, that was the only thing that they had that was their tie to the past. And then when Eva died, her daughters got the lamp. And Louise told the story that every time she walked by the lamp throughout her life, one thing she did was she touched it, just to have a touch to the past. And she has, they decided that, I can't tell you what a sacrifice that is to give up that treasure. I don't know if I could do something like that. Something that was so precious to me, to give that to a museum. It's the right thing to do. It's so that others can share that story. But it's a very hard thing to do, and we certainly do appreciate what sacrifice that you two have made in giving that lamp. Now, one thing that I want to notify you of, each year, middle school and high school students can enter a National History Day competition. And I want to, the Coal Creek story, different parts of the Coal Creek story, the Connie Harmon story, the Myrtle Harmon story, the David DeZerm story, the Marie and Louise story that we've told here today, all of those stories would make great National History Day projects. It's a way for you to earn scholarships. It's a way for you to set yourself apart from the competition in going to college. And next month, we're going to have a group of Riceville students who are now in high school going to come here to the McClung Historical Collection, and we're going to do research for National History Day projects for them to do on Coal Creek. So pay attention to these stories. And at this point, Cheryl, I don't know what kind of a formal ceremony, I'm just a poor old dumb engineer. I don't know the first time I've ever worn white gloves. How do you make a formal ceremony to officially accept the watch and the lamp into the museum? Come on up here. Help me out. Louise? Marie? Right here.
Louise and Marie.
Marie and Louise, come up here. Here's the watch, and I guess I will. Who read Tom Harmon's farewell letter? Come on. Here, you put on these gloves. You are going to be the official Harmon representative today. Now come over here and pick that watch up, please. Don't drop it. Errol will kill me if you drop it. And you're going to be the official Harmon representative. So, Cheryl, it's all your lady.
I'm professional, got my gloves today.
Well, you can do what you gotta do. Look up here. Okay, now go lay it back. I'm gonna take this stuff away. And you lay it on that stand right there. Notice we had a girl do it, we didn't have one of the boys do it. Scoot and turn it around. There you go. Turn it around so that you can get it. Okay, that's good. Now Louise, Marie, you don't have one here? Let's have white glove. Let's do this fishing. One of you put one on your left hand, the other put one on the right. Get the lamp, would please, in the photograph.
May I say that every time when my mother was sent to Illinois, that this was
Come here,
a rash.
please. Come here. Say hello.
I wasn't going to say anything here. I don't want to say it.
We knew you were gonna talk to me.
Every time that this lamp was loose, it was taken from Grandpa's cab, and my grandmother had it, and when she remarried, she wrapped a little cloth around this lamp and put it in a trunk. And that's where it stayed until she was got married, and she'd gone to Illinois, and then she got married, and then it was put in the trunk, and then my grandfather was a farmer, and we traveled to farm to farm, as he was renting farms, and one of the many trips, and this was all in Illinois, but then my father took us to a ranch in Colorado, Delta, Colorado. So this lamp had the little cover on it and went to Colorado. And then from Colorado it came back to Indiana, where we live. And then it was taken back to my mother and my father's home, and it stayed there. And then they moved to town, so my sister lived on the farm where they were, and it was put back out again. And then my sister moved into the house where my mother and father lived after they passed away, and this was always on the shelf. Everywhere we went, this was always on the shelf. And Marie and I decided that we couldn't divide this between one another. We all loved it. So we decided, having talked to Carol and Barry, with all the wonderful things, because they brought this history to us, and things we would never know. And so anyway, we decided this, and this is the great museum is going to have this, and we know now that it will be safe and in the light all the rest of this time. And we appreciate the museum giving us this opportunity. So, this is not easy. It's a part of our lives. But we know that people from everywhere now can observe this and know this story. I wasn't going to say anything. Everybody here, and I do so appreciate all these people that came, my friends that here in Knoxville. We appreciate Maria and I appreciate my family all coming from and they're all very busy people. But I do so appreciate all of them, and they feel like I do. This lamp, so they've always seen it, and all my great grandchildren there. So we're glad to present this, Marie, right?
Yes.
You can see she does the talking. They all know me, Marie. Okay?
They say that soul is the brevity of wit, and my favorite farewell message was George Hudson. All he said, he told his letter to his wife was, "Do as you wish." And it was implied that because you always do anyway. And when Louise said, you know, "I'm not going to say anything," Marie rolled her eyes.
I wasn't going to talk, but I do want to say this, that Marie and I have always felt so glad because there were no messages from our family, that they all four brothers worked together. And we feel in our hearts that the reason, because they from the census, they could read and write, but we feel like that they perished immediately and did not have to suffer. And this is, we carry this good feeling in our hearts that the brothers or our grandfather and our uncles, that they perished immediately and did not have to suffer.
Don't think I'm the only one with tears in my eyes today. This has been one of the most moving occasions we've had at the Historical Society, and we're so proud to be a part of it. On behalf of the East Tennessee Historical Society, I want to thank the families for these gifts. These will be placed in our museum. They'll have a prominent place in our museum to tell this story. We have tens of thousands of visitors a year, and they'll go through and see these stories, and these stories will live, you know, across the U.S. and through the world now, through being here and people being able to view them here. And we're very honored and just really touched by this. Thank you so much. Thank you, Barry and Carol, and Fred. Get the car out of the ditch.
That's all she wrote. Anybody want to say it? We're going to have sandwiches and bottled water. They're going to be brought in. So you're welcome to stay around, welcome to look at the bingo and look at the photographs and things. And then after we eat lunch, the students are going to have a guided tour of the Museum of East Tennessee History. And you can see where the watch and the lamp will be located.